you're in your 60s or 70s, the odds are that at some point you will consider alternate housing choices. Perhaps you will downsize, or maybe you will consider a continuing care or assisted living facility. Did you know, depending on your family's health history and your gender, the odds are very good that you will live to your mid-80s or 90s. When you first retire, life is good. You have more time for your family and hobbies. Retirement feels good. Then your health begins to decline. Like many people of your age, you will need assistance with activities of daily living because your ability to independently care for yourself diminishes. So what are the options for older people who can no longer live on their own? Do places exist that are more like a home and less like an institution? Do such places provide more autonomy and choices for their residents? Is assisted living an alternative to nursing home care or simply an intermediate step in the elder care process? What signs should family members look for as an indication that a loved one needs assistance with activities of daily living? Do assisted living facilities have rules and regulations? Should one be concerned about an assisted living facility's record-keeping procedures, staffing, training, certification, and compliance with building safety and health codes?
Assisted living is a housing model where a resident has a private apartment, and the apartment will have a small kitchenette, usually a bedroom and a bathroom, sometimes just a studio, sometimes two bedrooms, a private bath, a closet. So it is your private apartment. Outside your doors are many of the amenities you would find in a hotel. And these include housekeeping, dining services, typically 3 meals a day, transportation with a van to activities and most likely medical appointments, activities, and then something you won't find in a hotel is nursing care. And nursing care can consist of personal care attendants, helping with things like bathing, dressing, safety checks, responding to a call light that could go off behind closed doors, as well as a nurse to oversee the care and assistance with medication.
You mentioned a little bit earlier nursing homes. My understanding of nursing homes is that they provide 24-hour, around-the-clock nursing care.
Yes.
And is that the major difference between a nursing home and assisted living facility, or is there something else that differentiates the two?
There's a couple major differences. Nurses in an assisted living can't do anything hands-on, and hands-on would mean injections, would mean sliding scale insulin, would mean wound care, physical therapy, occupational therapy. However, those services can come in.
Okay, so at what stage, or for what reason, let me rephrase, for what reason does someone need to leave their home and go into an assisted living facility?
Can't be left alone is pretty much the number one concern, or death or institutionalization of a primary caregiver would be I would say the number 1 and 2 reasons. The third reason typically is socialization, just being isolated, and that is typically more secondary to somebody with some memory loss issues, where their physical needs aren't as salient as their socialization and safety and just being kept busy throughout the day.
Provide a level of assistance with what are referred to activities of daily living.
Yes.
Things like eating and bathing and toileting. Could you expand on that?
I can. We have activities of daily living, which you described, and instrumental activities of daily living, or IADLs, which would be things like housekeeping and keeping track of appointments and that type of thing. We can do as much or as little as somebody needs within the scope of our license. Provide toileting, we can do incontinence management. Feeding typically is something that you'll see on a dementia unit, not in traditional assisted living. Certainly queuing for feeding.
Based on what I hear, it appears to me that people who go into assisted living, they don't need a significant amount of care. They need some help, but not a lot. Is that fair to say?
It would have been fair to say about 5 years ago. And we're seeing a definite shift in the people that are in assisted living now, or the residents that I see, have more ADL needs, probably up from 1 to 2 to an average of 3 to 4.
It appears to me that there potentially are several steps within the aging process. You have people who stay home and they get in-home care. You have people who stay home, but then they go to adult daycare. You have people who go to assisted living. They leave their home altogether, and it's, as you said, it's an apartment. There are others who need more care than is available at assisted living, and they go to a nursing home care. I characterize them as steps, but are they really steps, or how does all this work?
You know, you can look at it as a step. In many of the families that we work with, the men like to do that. They
do, huh?
They want to apply some logic to what is happening to mom or dad, and they want to have some predictable answer that, okay, like when this happens, then we do this, and when this happens, when we do this. And the reality is that it's not that simple, and you really have to know the family and know the individual, because sometimes you can just work with things, work with informal and formal supports to create a good care plan that would allow somebody to stay home but still maintain some socialization, would allow them to maybe continue a volunteer activity if they had transportation, or if they have this or that. But that is an unknown variable that makes planning so tricky. There's planning, Medicaid planning and long-term planning and estate planning, and I recommend strongly that if people want to maximize their options, and as an industry in senior housing, we're coming up with fabulous different scenarios in care.
Because of the wonders or the miracle of modern medicine, people are living longer. And because they're living longer, I agree with you, they need to be more careful about how they plan. Because if they're going to live longer, they're also going to live with some form of infirmity and perhaps disability, and they need to plan for that. And I agree with you, nobody has a crystal ball, so you don't know how long you're going to live. You don't know whether you'll be seriously ill or not seriously ill. You don't know if you'll be disabled and to what degree. You don't know any of that. But to be on the safe side, it makes sense to plan.
It does make sense to plan.
It does. It makes perfect sense to plan.
I'm a planner.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm a planner too. Wow. Do assisted living facilities have rules and regulations with regards to, let's say, smoking, pets, visitors, travel, that sort of thing?
They do, and those rules aren't rules that are mandated by Executive Office of Elder Affairs, but those would be found in the usually in the resident handbook, or the disclosure of rights and services, and they do. Typically, assisted livings now are non-smoking. Most assisted livings that I've worked with do allow pets, but the pet needs to be interviewed by the executive director.
How do you do that? How do you interview a pet?
Oh, well, we had once at one facility I worked at this Chihuahua, and little teeny dog that was kept.
Could really bark, I bet.
Oh my goodness. The woman kept it in this like baby playpen thing, and that was all well and good, and she was fairly, independent. But people complained, so that was not a good fit for the Chihuahua and the rest of the residents.
Today we navigated the world of assisted living. We learned that as Americans live increasingly longer lives, many require ongoing long-term care. This care often falls to grown children, men and women who are in their 50s and 60s and are busy with careers and/or families of their own. We learned that as people age, they are less able to independently care for themselves. The purpose of assisted living is to aid and facilitate activities of daily living.